Welcome to Tabletop Gaming Guild. Today we'll be continuing my top 100 games, and we're looking at 81 through 90. This is an interesting mix of games, a nice variety, covering all different mechanics. My number 90 is one of the grandfathers of deck building. They took some of the concepts from Dominion and modernized it a little bit. That's Ascension, the deck building game. You now have a market row, so that's as you buy cards, there's going to be new cards coming available, and it's constantly changing what cards are available for you to buy. And you have two currencies, so you have money and a power currency, so you can use your power to fight monsters, your money to hire allies. Wasn't the most attractive game at the time, but they also did the cool concept of every time they came out with a new Ascension game, it was basically taking that game and adding one rule, and it was also made so that it could be intermixed with existing copies of the game. So you could enter the series at any point and have a really fun, playable game. However, for those people that entered at the beginning, would start off with an easy to learn game and could constantly add complexity with every expansion, and technically you can mix every single version of Ascension together. Downside of that is if you play this game all the time and you mix a bunch of versions together, it's going to be really hard to teach a new person, so you're going to want to separate all those versions out, and that can be quite a problem. And now, as you can see, this isn't the base game. I actually have several versions of Ascension in this box, but it's a series that's been running for a long time. I believe they're still coming out with versions of this. It's been highly successful and it's a really well done classic deck builder. My number 89 is kind of tricky. It's a deceptive game called Bunny Kingdom. What do I mean by deception? Basically, it looks so cutesy, but it is actually a pretty chunky strategy game. It's easy to learn, which is great, and you can actually play it with families, but there is a lot of thinking and math involved in this game. So if you got, older children, this would be great for them. This is a bingo style game. You're drawing tiles, picking which tile you want, and it's laid on a bingo style grid that gives you different strengths and different ways of scoring, and you're going to be multiplying the resources you get from various tiles that you've placed by the amount of power you have, which is basically done by building up fortresses in the area. We're back to the classics with my number 88, which is Betrayal on House of the Hill. This is popular because of how many iterations of this game have come out. They've put different themes on it. They've put pretty different editions. They've even made a legacy version of this game. The basic concept of this game is you're going to be exploring this house cooperatively, at least for the first part of the game. And then at some point, a haunt will occur, and the person that triggered the haunt will be reading one book, and the rest of the group will be reading a separate book telling them what they're going to do in this scenario based on a couple of factors that could determine which scenario that they're playing. And there's a lot of different scenarios that come with this game. And they could range from that person is straight up trying to kill everybody else to everybody is trying to escape this mansion before some giant bird takes it away. Known for being wild, super crazy things happening, it can be extremely swingy, but it is fun as long as you realize it's meant to be a lighthearted, silly game. If you don't take it too seriously, you will enjoy this game. Classic game seems to be the theme of this 10, with my number 87 being the hidden traitor game Battlestar Galactica. In Battlestar Galactica, you need a large group of players to semi-cooperatively try to escape from the Cylons. Unfortunately, one or more of your teammates will be Cylons in disguise. Now, this game could easily be in my top 10 if it wasn't so hard to get to the table. Between the high player count, the in-depth rules, and the difficulty teaching this game, it is a little bit hard to get the table. And this is a game you're going to want to always bring new people too, but it's such a challenge to have inexperienced players in this where you're probably going to lose. Otherwise, this is a phenomenal game. Anytime I get to take this to the table, I will. It's just not that often. Yet another classic for my number 86, and that's Mission to Red Planet. This is the first edition of the game. They've made a newer edition, which is probably what you're going to be able to find at this point. And they tweaked a few things to make minor improvements, but overall it's still an amazing game. It has one of my favorite mechanics of you have a hand of cards, you're playing those cards, and you don't get those cards back until you play a specific card that allows you to take all the cards back in your hand. So you're giving people information based on the cards you played, and they know what cards you still have left. So the more cards you play without pulling back, the more information your opponents have, and it really helps them with their strategy. In this game, you're going to be using that mechanic to place units onto spaceships, and then once those spaceships are full, they're going to launch onto Mars and distribute themselves into various provinces on Mars. And once you're on Mars, you are basically playing an area control game. So you want to have the most people in each area so that you, when it comes to the resource scoring round, you get more resources than anybody else. However, you do have to watch out because in your hand of cards, you have various sabotage options as well. You can actually blow up a spaceship that hasn't launched yet, or send it off to somewhere else where they might not want to have their units. So it's a really cool, fun game. It's rather short. It plays in, I believe it was like 45 minutes to an hour, and it's super easy to learn. Fun game. Worth a try. For my next game, I have a stand-in for the Command and Colors series. So, Battlecry is the example I brought, but there's a lot of games, great games in this series, and basically what this series does is it gives you 3 fronts to work in, and you have a hand of cards that refers to each front, and how many actions you can take in each front of what type. It's really important to manage your cards because you have limited communications like you would in the real battlefield, whereas if you send somebody off to this front, you might not have enough people to send here and there. So it's important that you save the people that can get to that front to communicate your orders, and make sure you have the ability to give orders to where you need those orders to go when you need those orders to happen. It's a really cool, clever mechanic. There are a number of games in the series that use that same mechanic and just change up the setting and change some of the rules just based on the units that would have been available. So Battlecry is the one set in the Civil War. You have Memoir 44, which is set in World War II. You have Napoleonic, which obviously is set during the Napoleonic Wars. And there's a few others, but those are the 3 I have. This is my personal favorite. Some of the other ones you had some special units that they had to do some special rules for, but for the most part, it is pretty much the same. My number 84 is a big surprise of a game. It's called Fallout Shelters. This is a small card game based on an app game, so most people didn't expect much from it. But it is a really solid worker placement game. You're basically building your facility, using your worker placements to take actions on those facilities once they are built, and increase your population, increase your size of your shelter, and you can also fight monsters and get points that way. It's really fun, and for a small card game, there's a lot of options on how you can score points. Not to mention this being based on an app, it did kind of worry some people, and they didn't expect much from it because of that, but I think it really ties in well with the app and really captures the energy of mobile gaming, and I think they did a really, really good job with Fallout Shelters. Now, there's actually 2 trends in this set of 10. The first I noticed was a lot of classic games, but there's also a lot of games with player count issues. Games that require higher player counts or only play with 2 player counts, so I don't get them to the table that often because I usually have 3 to 5 players. And Dune is one of those games with the higher player count requirements. So you need 2 to 6 players, and it's definitely recommended that you have at least 5 or 6 for this game. On top of that, Dune is also a classic game that's been re-implemented. The original game was released quite a while back and couldn't be re-released for a long time because the IP was untouchable. The family that controlled the IP wasn't letting it go. It was re-released as Rex from the Twilight Imperium theme, but it didn't have quite the reception as the Dune theme. So when they finally brought this back with the original theme, it was a fairly sizable hit. And it does really well with the theme. In this game, you are negotiating and trying to take control over territories, and you have the powers of different families from the Dune universe. And the powers of the families really do mesh well with elements from the books and how those various families were portrayed. It does a really good job. It's definitely on the longer end of the range, and it does require higher player count. But if you can get a large group together, this is a really intense social experience worth checking out. My number 82 is more Euro than most of the ones on this 10, and that's Guilds of London. So in Guilds of London, it's mainly a worker placement area control game with multi-use cards. So all the cards in your hand can either be used to spend to be able to play other cards, you can use them for the action on the card, or you can use them for the suit that allows you to move your workers once they're placed on the tiles. And new tiles are becoming available every round, and those tiles generally are area control functions that mostly give you points for being a first or second. Overall, it's a straightforward, easy to learn, fast game that has a fair amount of iconography. Not quite as bad as Race for the Galaxy, but still a fair amount. But you can pick it up fairly easily. So oddly enough, we're finishing off this list with our number 81, which is a crossover with myself on this very top 10. That's Unfathomable. Now, Unfathomable is very similar to Battlestar Galactica, and in fact, that's where a lot of the mechanics are taken from, but they've tried to streamline it a little bit. It is still a very high player count game that can be a little complex to learn, and you are definitely going to lose your first time. You probably will have a better chance in subsequent plays, but it's definitely a little faster than BSG. It's a little bit slightly more streamlined, and it does feel like you're in more direct conflict with the environment, the monsters, and your potential betrayers than you do in BSG. It also ends up actually being fairly similar thematically, because you are on a ship trying to get to land, so you're racing to cross the ocean and survive until you make it to the safety of, or relatively safety of, the shore. So that was my 81 through 90. A lot of classic games in this list, a lot of really great high player count games with strong thematic ties. Any one of these games would be great to have your collection. As long as you can get to them to the table, they will be fun every single time. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to check us out on other social media such as Instagram and Facebook, and don't forget to like and subscribe.